they would be somewhat elongated. Today we're going to be speaking about Peck, and more specifically the book The Road Less Travelled, and I guess some of the ideas that are contained within it. I read it probably like 8 or 9 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, and it's a book that I've reread over the years, and yeah, I feel like I've gotten a lot out of it, a lot of good ideas. Nick read it for the first time last week. Yeah. How'd you find it?
It was great. I mean, I think, it was easy for me to read. As you know, I read it in a day. And yeah, I found that a lot of stuff harked back. Like, it was easy for me to digest because I think that I had already encountered or believed or practiced a bunch of the things that were in the book, but they were expressed in a new way that was really fresh, and it was wonderful. Easy to digest for me.
Yeah. I was somehow happy that Nick read it in a day, because he mentioned he bought it, and then the next day he was like, "Hey man, I finished it," because that to me indicated that he enjoyed it, of course. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Were there any new insights? You mentioned a lot of the stuff you'd already sort of felt or like come to understand. Any new insights?
Okay, maybe we can return to the stuff that I think harks back to some of the stuff we talked about in previous podcasts. To begin with, something that was enlightening. As you know, so the book I think is divided into like 4 parts. I think the second part is on love. And as I said to you last week, I was like, I think I'll skip this part. I don't really want to talk about love right now. And I think part of that is because when
you were reading it, you felt uncomfortable. I
felt uncomfortable. And then I was like, okay, cool. Like, that means I should probably delve into it and like see why it's uncomfortable. And it brought up I think for me, it brought up a lot of feelings from past relationships that were painful. But actually a note that I just made just 5 minutes before the podcast, is on dependency. And it was really cool because it gave me like a new lens to like look at that relationship. So Peck defines dependency as the inability to function adequately without the certainty that one is being cared for. And he talks about passive dependent people who are so busy seeking to be loved that they have no energy to love. Because of their lack of wholeness, they have no real sense of identity and define themselves solely by their relationships. And like that gave me a new lens to like look on that relationship that for me was very sapping. And I realized in hindsight that I was like giving and giving and giving and not getting much in return. And interestingly, it kind of, at that young age, it kind of made me want to give more and give more. And I remember that when we broke up, I almost felt like I'd given a piece of her to me that I was never going to get back.
Piece of you to her?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that mean, are you saying that you think were you depending on her or she was depending on you?
Other way around.
Yeah.
But there's something about being a man and like having somebody depend on you that's like very gratifying. And it made me feel like a man, in quotes, to like have this girl be dependent on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you almost say that you were dependent on her to give you that feeling?
Right.
In a way?
Yeah. And then that was like kind of taken from me, which is painful. But this allowed me to like look at it in a new way.
Yeah. I also reread it again just before we did this podcast, and I also found the whole section on love very painful. So, interesting, hey?
Yeah, it's challenging. He actually, just before we move on from this dependency thing, just one last quote, says, "Dependency may appear to be love, but in actuality it is not love. It is a form of anti-love. The parental failure to love perpetuates this failure." And I noticed that for this girl, like, it's almost like she wanted me to be her father and she didn't have a very strong relationship with her father. And that's not a role that anybody can fulfill. I mean, that's something that she needs to work out with her father, but especially at that young age, I was like, I definitely can't do that. So, yeah, like that was definitely one of the new things in the book that was very eye-opening for me.
The dependency aspect.
Yeah, it just gave me a new frame on a painful chapter.
Yeah, okay. Had you come to those conclusions previously on your own, do you think?
Less well articulated, I would say.
Yeah.
And also, there's something nice in somebody else saying it, then you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Especially Peck saying it, you're like, okay, there's something to this.
Yeah. I think I still find that balance tricky. So kind of as Nick was saying, Peck says that dependency is anti-love, and I think he's sort of saying the ideal relationship is when you're interdependent. So you're not with someone because you depend on them, but you could comfortably and happily be independent, but you choose to be together and share things. And I guess you depend on them for certain things, not because you couldn't do it yourself, but because you choose to. Maybe that's something I'm still trying to. It seems almost difficult to if you're in a relationship and to depend on someone, but then to be capable of also doing that independently. Do you know what I mean?
I do, but what came to mind just now is how Peck talks about that the love is the willingness to extend oneself for another spiritual growth. And he also says that we can only love so many people. We only have a capacity to love finitely. So then there's a question of selection about and he also says that one of the key things to love is attention. So then, as we talked about a lot on the podcast, it's like attention is also a finite resource. So then there's a question about how you're going to divest that resource and how to select the people to love. And he says that one of the criteria is that you have to choose people that have the ability to grow spiritually. Or if people are uncomfortable with that language, to grow. The ability to grow maybe emotionally.
Or you could even just say to receive the love. Yeah? Capable
but in a certain way though, towards growth.
Yeah.
So you extend yourself, and in extending yourself, you help them extend themselves. So yeah, I can see how there's an interdependence there where it's like, I'm extending myself, you're extending yourself, but that's only if you have the willingness to want to extend yourself. So my love depends on your ability to take care of yourself and to also be a responsible adult. So that's an interrelationship that I have with somebody where, it depends on them taking care of themselves as well.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's also that they can be happy and fulfilled without you, but choose to do things with you. Do you know what I mean?
It's an interesting framing because I'm trying to think of a counter. I'm just trying to challenge that. It's let's see if we can make it true that they wouldn't be happy and fulfilled without you, and how that would actually be healthy.
Okay.
Let's take your parents for an example. They make each other fulfilled and happy, and I think that if they were to lose each other, it would be true that they would lose some happiness and fulfillment.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's not always true that they need to be happy and fulfilled, that you need to be happy and fulfilled without a partner. And that it doesn't have to be an unhealthy form of love in order for you to depend on the person in certain ways.
Yeah. Or would you say maybe you can be happy and fulfilled, but being together enhances that?
Maybe, yeah.
Because it does seem unhealthy if to be split if you would no longer have any happiness or fulfillment. Do you think?
Yeah. I like this word of extension though, like, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that somewhere in the book he talks about how his capacity to love more extends him more.
Yeah.
And for him, really extending the soul or spiritual growth is the meaning of life. So that as you grow in your capacity to love, you grow and you're fulfilling your need as a human, according to his thesis. Yeah, I see love as central to his kind of picture of how to create a meaningful life, and therefore, you at least need you need the capacity to love, and you need opportunities to love, which involve other people. So.
Yeah.
It is tricky, so I'm just taking the opposite side because you took one side.
No, I don't even disagree with that. I probably agree with your what you just said, man. Just thinking about it more. Yeah.
It's funny because I also was like, there is a danger in depending on other people. So then I was like, are there sources of love other than other people? And actually he has an answer to that, which is God. There's also God's love. Maybe we can come back to that later. It's a bit woo-ish, but I like it.
Yeah. I think, I know there's a part where he says like, if you depend on people, like he says he has a coworker, who's known for saying like, you're better off depending on heroin than on people, because as long as you have a supply, you'll always get a fix. But if you're depending on people, they'll always let you down, or disappoint you.
They'll eventually, not always.
Yeah, sorry. At some point, that's life is going to happen.
Yes.
with different people. Yeah. I'm trying to remember for the where did he go with that point? Do you remember where he went with that point?
No, I don't.
Maybe it was like the risk of depending on another person.
I mean, it's funny because the other book of mine that's in your room is The Fragility of Goodness by Martha Nussbaum, and she explores this topic from a Greek perspective. And actually, I was momentarily for a while going to write my PhD, kind of resolving some of the conflicts that I thought she brought up in her book, which is to say that she thinks that tragedy is just a part of life. So long as you've got things in your life that you depend on, there's going to be tragedy. But she doesn't say that that's a bad thing, because she also says that those things that we rely on are great things. And so one answer to that is Plato, who basically says like, look, your whole life should just be about contemplation. That doesn't really rely on anybody, and it's like the highest of human virtues. But then Aristotle, as we talked about last time, said you need to have a certain number, you need to be adequately furnished in external ways in some manner, so that you're just not surviving. And it goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that if you're in the bottom part where you're focusing on survival, then it's very difficult to focus on, let's say, spiritual growth. I didn't like, that's where the book ends. I didn't like that. And my answer to that was Stoicism. That's my PhD was going to be on using Stoicism to kind of, let's say, address the needs or the challenges that I think is posed by Aristotle's take on moral luck and tragedy. So I don't know. I think it's interesting that some people say that a kind of dependence on things is necessary for a meaningful life. And then there's also an argument that it's not necessary for a human life. But so maybe I just want to leave that actually as a tension that needs to be balanced. Because I haven't properly resolved that in my own mind.
Yeah, I don't think I have either. My more simplified take on that would be, it's clear there's clearly instances where people depend on things and it's unhealthy.
Yeah,
and
I see.
It's desirable. That's a funny way to say it, but to be less dependent on things. Right? It's more ideal to be independent and not relying on things or people, let's say. I guess we're talking about people in this case. Yeah, but it also seems sad if you lived a life where you didn't depend on anyone for anything. Something about that seems sad. Do you think? Yeah.
I can see that, but then in my mind, I'm always like, can I challenge that? And like, how can I make it not sad? And I think, for instance, in the Scientific American, every now and then they'll write or National Geographic or something, they'll write an article on the happiest man alive. And it's always some fucking guy who meditated for 8 years in a cave. So, and I've seen interviews with these people where they have so much love, and oftentimes they're meditating on just like expanding love and equanimity to all beings and wisdom to all beings. And when they come out of that environment, and think about it, man, like it's interesting that across cultures you have people who play a special role, which is a monk or a priest or something like that, where they are devoted to a life of celibacy. I think that's interesting that has evolved across cultures, that some of the people that we go to for our spiritual guidance, which we could elevate above, material things, everyday life, spirituality is something above that. In order to go for those most important questions of life, we go to people that have thrown off this idea that you need sex and a relationship with a person, and you know what I mean? I think these are interesting counterexamples where some of the wisest and happiest people that we elevate to a new role in society have thrown off all of these things that we say are required for happiness.
Yeah, think about that. Do monks have friends? I don't actually know much.
I think they live in societies of monks, and so.
Mm-hmm. So do you think they have like deep friendships with other monks? Is that?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think more deeply that they have a communion with God. I don't know if that's satisfactory for everybody. And as I mentioned, a lot of these monks have a deep feeling of connection to all beings. And I'm not saying that that's actually optimal. And I'm not saying that it's something that everybody should reach for. In Buddhism, they also talk about how the layperson is different to the devout monk. But what I am saying is that there are interesting counterexamples to what we think is important for a life well lived.
Yeah. In this case, it's the absence of a
romantic relationship.
Yeah.
I think there are...
Whereas Peck seems to indicate that's... he never really says that, does he?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
He talks about the love of God.
Yeah. I think it's very much implied, though, a lot of it. Love for friends, but also for a particular partner.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said there, Plato said contemplation is the highest good. Earlier today when we were having lunch, you mentioned that you tend to not like to contemplate things.
I don't like to deliberate.
Okay, yeah. Right. Okay. And you define that as putting off making a decision based on contemplation.
I don't like to deliberate. Yeah, I don't mind. It's funny because I suppose I don't mind spending a lot of my time thinking about things that other people would think is irrelevant.
Yeah.
I like worrying about things like justice and equanimity and peace, and I think relatively little about, for instance, how quickly it took for me to decide where I was going to live next. Yeah. I didn't deliberate on that very much at all.
Yeah.
Recently I was going through this thing where I didn't have job security, and you were there for the whole thing. Did I seem to be anxious about where am I going to work? I mean, it was something that I needed to think about, but I didn't deliberate very much. I don't really deliberate about everyday pedestrian things that I think are pedestrian, but I'm really happy to, for instance, set a day aside to read The Road Less Traveled.
Yeah. Is that intentional that you don't deliberate, or is it because you don't enjoy it unless it's an important thing?
Right. We talked about this, how like you like to deliberate over technology because you find that fun, and I don't necessarily find that fun. Yeah, it's very intentional. Two things that come to mind. The first is a book called The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz. We might have talked about it in the podcast, I'm not sure, but he's a psychologist, I believe, out of NYU, who's done work on giving people a bunch of choices and then seeing how that affects their decisions and how happy they are with those decisions. And so there's a famous example. I can't really remember the numbers, but it's like one group was given a choice of 3 jams and another group was given a choice of, let's say, 30 jams. And basically the people that were in the 30 jams cohort tended to be less happy with their choices, because then they could like compare them to all these other choices. As a brief side note, I think that that's why a lot of people are unhappy in their relationships these days, because at any moment you can pick up your phone and have access to an apparently large number of potential partners. Whereas back in the day, it was like, who was in your neighborhood, basically. So as it turns out that we think that choices are inherently good.
And do you think with that, when you get overwhelmed with choices, you stop kind of caring in a way, do you?
Oh yeah, I do personally.
You know what I mean?
I just want to finish the point. Yeah. We think that choices are inherently good. Actually, what turns out to be good is autonomy. So for instance, if you had only the choice of 1 jam, that would be very bad because you don't have any choice. That's not a fair choice. But if you have a choice of 3, it's like you feel like you could choose. With the choice of 30, it's like you definitely can choose, but you're overwhelmed at that point, as you were kind of alluding to.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. Then the other part is we know that, for instance, the parts of the brain that are involved, like the basically prefrontal cortex parts of the brain that are involved in deliberation, are also involved in things like decision making, complex mathematics, contemplation, all the things that are associated with rationality and intellect. So we know that kind of takes energy away. If you're deliberating a bunch, it's not likely that you're going to have a bunch of mental energy left to focus on mathematics or whatever. So I just decided that so long as I have I can treat my attention as a finite resource, and I know that a certain amount of deliberation actually in hindsight makes you less happy with your choices, I decided very intentionally to divest much less attention and focus into deliberation. And so, for instance, when I bought this mic that I'm speaking into, I literally went onto Google and said, what are the best mics? And then I read 3 top lists, or the top 10 lists of best mics. This one came up in a bunch of them, and then I pretty much bought it on that day. I didn't deliberate much, and it hasn't let me down. Yeah. And so what I did was I basically sourced a bunch of other people's deliberations. And I find that you can do that much more readily than you think. Not to harp on this point too much, but we also know that circumstances matter far less than mindset for happiness. That's been well documented in the literature. So then I was like, okay.
Cool. I like all this. It makes me want to be more like that. Then I think the natural resistance to it is that if you're too rash, let's say, because let's say the opposite. If you ill apply what you're saying, would be like not thinking things through and just buying it. Let's say we bought a bad mic because we didn't spend any time figuring it out. my concern there is maybe you either get not the optimal outcome or thing that you could have, or maybe you pay way too much, or so like let's say I just bought a computer like 3 days ago, and I probably spent the good part of a day researching.
Oh, that's not long at all.
All the components.
Okay.
Isn't it? That felt like a lot of time to me.
Yeah, no, the way that you were describing it, it sounded like you spent a lot more time than a day. Wow. Okay.
A day's a lot of time.
Okay.
That's a long time to me, man.
It's all relative. Okay.
Yeah. I think it's long. Well, because I think of all the other things I could be doing in that day.
Sure. But you're excited about it.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think through my internal nature and that. In my head, I'm like, well, I'm gonna get a new computer. I've decided that, so I want to make sure I optimize it for what I'm actually going to do with it, which is editing the film.
Yes.
That's the priority. Like, it doesn't really matter what else it can do.
Yes.
And then it was like, well, I need to learn what components are important for video editing. And is it the graphics card or is it the CPU? Like which one's more important? Are they both important? All these little things, and then going deeper and deeper on these. Because there's a lot of different configurations you can have, different brands you can go with, which give you different options.
Yes.
I find it fun and interesting. It's definitely not a although I'm kind of happy to say that I find a lot of things interesting when I'm like focused on them, right?
Yeah, you could go deeply. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I definitely noticed the point where I'm like, look, mate, you've probably found a really good computer here, but I had the curiosity to keep looking elsewhere, and like you said, because with computers there is infinite basically possibilities where there's so many different brands, just and different ways to go about it. You can buy this computer and then separately buy RAM there and like a hard drive from this place, and then build it to yourself. Where am I going with this? But I definitely think I spent probably more time than some people would on this thing. And even this is interesting. After I bought it, because the place I bought it from was having a sale, classic, hilarious as well. The sale was ending like the day I bought it, and then as soon as the sale ended, they started the exact same sale for another week. It's like, you guys, you got me. But anyway, after it, for some reason, I was still curious to learn more about certain things, and like when I would see a computer or something, I'd quickly look into it and be like, would that be better for what I wanted? Was that a better deal? I was still curious about it, even though like it's kind of happened now. I've made the order, so why am I saying all this? Because I guess I was like contemplating that decision. And so if I didn't do that, the other thing would be I had an MSI laptop before. I'll just buy another MSI for roughly the same price that I paid. You know what? It probably would. The outcome would probably be pretty similar, in the sense that it would probably do what I needed to do. But it mightn't be quite optimized as much as I would like. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That's interesting to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's just different strokes for different folks. I have a bunch of colleagues that love going into the details and this kind of stuff. It's not personally something that I enjoy.
And so if you don't enjoy it, you will just try to efficiently make the decision. Not like ignorantly, but... Yeah.
The other thing that I remembered while you were speaking is that I also asked two people their opinions. It actually... For the mic.
Okay.
It reminded me of... I think I told this story in a podcast, but it might be an apocryphal story where like somebody goes up to Picasso in a cafe, says, "Can you sketch me something?" He sketches something on a napkin, and she says... and then he says to her, "That'll be 2,000 euros." And she says, "Well, it took 30 seconds." And he's like, "No, madam, it took 30 years and 30 seconds. So if I spend a day trying to deliberate on this mic, that's going to pale in comparison to somebody that spent 30 years and then makes a 30-second decision.
Yeah.
So I also asked two people. I asked somebody who is a jazz musician who like went to the Conservatorium of Music and studied music, and then I asked like somebody who I happen to share my office with, who's like performs live music as part of her career. And they both said, "Wow, that's a really great mic." So I also, because and when we were talking about purchasing computers, I mentioned that for my research, I do a bunch of that. And I almost always deliberate that decision to somebody that I think has spent more time thinking than me about it. And the other thing for me is that these outcomes don't really matter. I don't actually really care. So long as I have a computer that can do pretty much what I need it to do, I don't really care about squeezing out the extra 10%.
Okay.
Yeah, my belief about it is like, if you can buy a computer that's kind of at the cutting edge now, at a certain price point, you'll get at least 80% of the gains. And then you're likely going to have to buy a new computer in a couple of years anyway. So I don't worry about, because one word that you use a lot that I almost never use is optimal.
I was just thinking, as you're saying this, also, you know how Aristotle says, don't be something around pettiness.
Yeah, petty risks.
Yeah. This maybe is a petty risk that I'm concerned about.
It depends on if you...
Which is like trying to optimize that last little bit. Yeah. Doesn't really matter now that I'm thinking about it.
It's like when we were moving and you were trying to do it as quickly as possible, a word that you used was optimal.
Yeah.
I was like, well, what's the rush?
Yeah.
And when it became less optimal, for me, it became much more fulfilling and meaningful. So that I don't care about...
In terms of the moving and just chilling.
Yeah. So a lot of the things that people deliberate, for me, are not meaningful. And I would much rather take that energy and divest it into things that I find to me. It's not that difficult. I'm not doing anything tricky. It just, on the surface, seems different.
I think the difficult thing for me is to let go of the...
you don't need to let go of it.
But I think I would be. If I wanted to truly adopt this, I would let go of, like, next time I get a computer or whatever it is, instead of trying to get think, yep, that is definitely the best thing for what I'm looking for in terms of value and performance and doing what I want it to do specifically, and spending the extra time to get that, or instead just saying that's going to do the job, I'm sure that it's going to be okay, and then not really knowing, maybe there were 5 better options, slightly cheaper and that 10% faster for what I'm trying to do, but that's okay.
Yeah, if you want to. I'm definitely not saying anybody should adopt this, but it's just the way that I like to do things. Because the other thing that I've noticed is...
We should at least try it, I think. If I'm being disciplined, I should try it. Maybe I'll regret it next time. Okay, I'm not doing that again.
If you want to explore, you
can.
But
maybe I'll, like you say...
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
What I was going to say is that, just flashing back, actually, as you were saying that, I was like, yeah, the people that I can think of that are really into, like, optimizing their hardware, after they buy... On the day they buy it, they're super happy about it, and then 2 weeks later, they'll start complaining about it.
Really?
Yeah, I should have got this other thing, and that's also better. And okay. I remember when I bought my deep learning laptop, somebody was like, "Oh, I'm really jealous of you." They had like a $20,000 computer. They were like, "Man, I wish I could take mine wherever I went." It's like, well, okay. So
I feel like I'm always very happy with my decision.
You tend to be
mic. What do you call it? Recorder that we're recording this through. I probably spent a day researching recorders, learning more about them, and then landing on this one.
Yep. I'm
so happy with it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Definitely.
Yeah, and also once I buy these things, I stop researching because what's the point?
What's the point?
Unless I need to get another one.
Yeah.
Then
good point.
I know that, cool. I know enough about this thing. It taught me a bit about the space in general, and that's all I need to know for now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I had a little bit with the computer because I was looking up some other ones. Maybe it's probably because in my head I'm like, it hasn't arrived yet. I could, if something happens, I could maybe tell them, don't send it. I've got, but that's just a bit stupid as well. Yeah, but I'll consider it. I think the healthiest thing is to always try that idea if you're not sure. Maybe because I feel like I might enjoy your way of being more as well.
Okay.
Because I was very much aware, like I spent almost, like I said, I think I spent a whole day basically researching computers, which is cool and fun. But maybe I also thought I could be working on the film right now, you know?
Okay.
I could be more focused on creative aspects of that still need to be done, which ultimately is probably more important. Yeah. But it's not a pressing issue. If that were like needing to be done ASAP, maybe I would be different. Yeah. But then at the same time, if I had like I can't do, if I had all the time in the world, I guess find it fun learning the latest computer tech stuff and then making sure I'm getting like what I think is
great.
Yeah.
What comes to mind for me is a friend of mine once said, you know what I noticed about you, Nick? You don't solve problems, you solve classes of problems. I'm always trying to think about how can I solve 10 problems at once?
Yeah.
So it's funny because for me, man, all of these decisions, like this new way of life, as you know, I went back to university and got a whole degree in philosophy. I was like, I don't really want to deliberate on all these little things. Let me just create a system. So that's just my way of doing things.
System is philosophy.
And more specifically that I focus on that plane, that I'm not that interested in what's happening at the kind of like surface level. Yeah, it's a different way of being that I'm not advocating, but or advertising or encouraging, but yeah, for me it's like, where do I live doesn't who cares, so long as I can like live a relatively good life. And
well, what was important to you was not being too loud.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly, just peace and quiet.
Yeah, and that if that's your main focus, it's not too hard to find that.
Yeah, it was easy.
Yeah,
it's relatively easy.
Yeah, what I like about this, man, is I really feel like it helps you stay non-petty in your focus, because to expand the pettiness word itself, I can see how like focusing on the
minutia,
finicky, it's somehow a little bit petty, perhaps.
I'm always just trying to play devil's advocate, because like I see the value in what you're doing if it makes you happy. And there are people that focus on details that I want to work with because they're detail oriented.
Okay, good. That's true. Yeah, I do respect people that are like artists in that, and even myself actually with a film.
Yes.
But that's not petty, because that's an important
Exactly.
thing.
Let's not denigrate it as being petty.
Yeah.
It's just a different level of focus.
Yeah.
For some reason, I'm interested in the highest levels of abstraction, and I don't think reasoning at those levels is better.
Yeah.
Plato does, but I don't necessarily think I believe in Plato.
I wonder if you get specific enough on anything, does it become petty? Perhaps. What do you think?
I thought you were going to say the opposite thing, which is if you become specific enough, does it become interesting? That's what Feynman said. If you take anything seriously enough, it'll eventually become deep and interesting. So,
okay. I'm more. Let's if we can take the film example. So, I think it's great when you care so much that you're like, this scene has to be this way, right?
I see. We're talking about a slightly different thing.
Maybe, yeah. So, yeah. And in this case, like it might be, I want him to give this look. I want him to look at that character, say. For some reason, that's important to me. I don't know, but then if you start getting too into it, that frame has to be, I don't know, at a certain point you might be like, yeah, look, that's just not necessary.
Yeah, this is, yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a difference between like going deep and then being caught up on details.
Yeah. But I also do love the, I feel like with the art, it has to be a feeling. It feels right.
Yeah.
Good. If not, keep working on it until it feels right. And that's definitely not petty, in my opinion, because it's important. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Maybe just confuse myself going around just explore the topic in elongated fashion. You're welcome.
Yes. Well, seeing as we're coming in an elongated fashion, can we start back at why is it that you picked this book and what it means to you, and how did you come across the book? Maybe let's start with that.
Just 1 second, because I wonder if I had one more point on what we were just talking about.
Good.
I think to finalize on that before we tie into your new point. I think I'm at least aware of when I'm deliberating on something that I don't think is worth deliberating on.
Yes.
And then I try to push myself into just resolving the thing and moving on. So, yeah.
Yep.
Seems like you naturally now don't even need to.
I have a very low tolerance.
Yeah.
I deliberate on very few things. Just the way that I want to be.
Cool. Oh, that's right. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Final thing on this. I think a really good example of the problem with deliberation, perhaps, or maybe this is more maybe the problem of too much choice, was when I went to Vietnam with my brother and my mate, and we were like, we're going to get all these clothes made in Hoi An, and oh my goodness, there's like that many tailors there, and they can make anything you want, you know? So I was like, I had photos of things I thought were cool. I like this. I want a shirt like that. I want a suit like that. I want shoes like that, whatever. The problem is you get there and you're like, I like this. And then they're like, okay, well, how many buttons do you want? What kind of material on the outside, on the inside? Yeah. You know, like, how thick do you want the lapel?
That would drive me crazy.
Yeah. And at first I'm like, this is sweet. You know, I want this exactly there. And anyway, and then they tell you all that and they're like, cool, that'll be this much dollars. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to go check a few places out, you know, because you go to the next place and then after like 4 places, you're like, they're all starting to look the same and I don't really care anymore. You know what I mean? And I noticed it with my friend in particular. He just did not care. He got to the point where he was like, look, just make it like the picture. And I started feeling that too. And then it was for me, it was like, no, I gotta be disciplined. Like, what is the coolest thing to you? And like, yeah. But it was overwhelming. And I was like, you couldn't live like that where instead of going to a shop and just buying the shirt that you like, because they've got 10 shirts, that one's good. If you could like custom make everything, I think a lot of people would be like, I don't want to do that. Even though you have more choice, it's too much. Yeah. And you'd have a lot of the, oh, actually, maybe I should have gone with that. Maybe I should have changed this. Whereas if you just go buy the shirt from the shop, you're probably never going to think about any of that. So, yeah, that was a really prominent example of that. Yeah. It was interesting. And then I think, yeah. There's almost like a balance in that too, offering the customer enough choice, but limiting them somewhat. Otherwise, they'll be overwhelmed. Yeah.
It just makes me think that maybe it's cynical, but it's like I think they're catering to a person that's never going to be satisfied. The person wants 13 buttons rather than 12. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. No, I mean, I think they're just like, I just want to try and make this guy happy, and whatever he wants, I'll do it.
Yep.
But I guess people don't know what they want a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. All right, man, cool. So circle back to your question about the book. What was the question again?
How did you come across the book?
How did I come across it? I remember when I was, I don't know how old I would have been, probably like 12 or 13.
Oh.
I just as a kid, you know, you want whatever, you're doing this, and Mum would be like, what would she say? So pretty much like instant gratification. You've got to wait for that. You know, it's not going to come straight away. Anyway, and I feel like she'd make these random quotes.
Yeah.
That I think as I got a bit older, I was like, yeah, I really don't know how I got on. As in, so I think Mum would say things that come from this book.
Oh, so she's read it?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Okay, yeah. I thought you knew. No, yes. Like some, I don't remember exactly how, but I think I would have asked Mum, like, are these things from somewhere? Or maybe she even said, oh, it's from this book. And I remember she had the book, and then probably like a while after that, I just randomly decided I'm going to read that book. You know, I don't think it was necessarily like it's from this book. Oh, okay, I'm going to read it right away. You know, it's kind of one of those things that I came back to later. Yeah, I think I read it and I was like, damn. Probably like you, went through it very quickly, and a lot of the things resonated with me. So, and some of them I guess I was aware of because Mum was, you know, it was cool. It gave me an appreciation for Mum for having read it, and then no doubt applying that to her life, and also to how to help my brother and I growing up.
That's sick.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So when did you read it for the first time?
That's a good question. I feel like maybe my early 20s.
Yep.
Yeah.
Would you have been in university or just out?
I think just out.
Yep. So you're working in finance?
Yeah, that or even just after that. This is really just speculation because I can't quite remember the exact date, but I would imagine it was either during or after working full time. Yeah.
It's just funny because that's the same time I read Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Damn, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I would have probably assumed you read that at uni because that's a time when you're learning a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but I did a science degree.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Interesting.
I mean, it's the first time.
Yeah. That's cool. Nice. Yeah. I feel like I read a few books around that time. I think after reading this, because I wouldn't say it's a self-help book, but it certainly has ideas that you can apply that will help you live a more intentional life, I would say, probably. And so I feel like around the same time I read also like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, okay.
There's another book but just books of that kind with like, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Okay.
Yeah, like just interesting ideas and applicable, you know. Yeah, that was a big book for me.
Which one?
How to Win Friends and Influence People. Mainly in the don't criticize because it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, up until that point, I think I was trying to be honest and like, I'll let you know how I feel so you know how I feel and we can move on from there. But looking back, I think I was far too ready to do that. Whereas now I very rarely criticize someone. Yeah.
Okay.
Almost ties in with our
openness.
You need to be an expert to.
Oh yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Sympathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can, should have asked this earlier. Can you give a quick summary of the book? Do you think?
Oh God. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's hard.
It's hard, isn't it? I found it hard. I was in like a meet up with friends where we all brought a book and we had to talk about the book. And for some reason, I found it difficult to kind of give an overview of the book, which is a bit.
I think again, playing devil's advocate, it's like maybe we can have resistance to the need to summarize things. As you said, it's a book that you can come back to over and over again. Maybe the first thing that I would say is like, the way that he opens the book says a lot, which is that life is difficult, and that when you can accept that it's difficult, it no longer becomes difficult. Because within each of he says that things are a problem. We only label things as a problem because they're painful. That's why they get the label problem. But then when you realize that overcoming problems is how you grow and how you get meaning out of life, then you begin to relish problems. Problems don't become difficult, but it's something that you actually seek out. You seek out good kinds of problems and you try to avoid bad problems. And then you realize that in growing, you kind of extend yourself and you have this, what he would call spiritual growth, and that's the meaning of life. So the fact that life is quote unquote difficult is just a negative label that we put on it. It's not necessary. And if you can shift that to saying that challenges are simply an opportunity for growth, and that growth is the meaning of life, then you have, I think, a totally different perspective on whether problems are painful or not.
Mm. Well said, man. I also just thought with the difficult thing, life is difficult. Let's think about computer gamers who choose to go to the highest difficulty. Why do they do that? Because they enjoy the challenge. It's difficulty is not necessarily a bad thing.
Where I thought you were going with that is he talks about how with mental health issues, oftentimes we substitute fake problems for real problems. And we focus on things that we make into problems that actually don't need to be solved. And as I've talked about previously, that this is one of my favorite things to do, is to realize that a problem that society tells you is a problem can just simply be cut through. For instance, with the both of us, how do you stay up to date on current events? You don't need to. Next question.
Yeah.
How do you keep up with your mortgage payments? You don't need to. Next question. You know?
Yes.
So, for me, it's like you can avoid...
Well, you don't need to. You have to, otherwise you go bankrupt.
Or you don't have to buy a house.
Okay.
Or you don't have to get yourself into a position where you can't afford a house that you then buy, and then you're in this endless... you're in this endless cycle of payments where you can't afford your house, can't afford your car, can't afford your lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you live at a lifestyle that you can afford?
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, there's actually, maybe this is an aside, but for me, there's actually only one financial problem. People say that, financial issues, you got to get a financial planner. There's only one financial problem, which is that you don't have enough money for what you would like. So how about you just like things that you can afford? Next question.
Yeah. Change what you want. Yeah. Want less. Yeah. But I agree with you. Yeah, definitely. The news one is clear to me. The current affairs one, where it doesn't matter. I'm doing just as well as I was.
No, you're doing better.
Yeah, I'm more focused. Yeah. That's funny. That's a controversial one. Hey,
All of these are controversial.
I have friends that are like, "How can you be so ignorant?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't feel any more ignorant than you, mate. You know.
Oh, I feel much smarter than you. but
You're arrogant. I feel more focused than them sometimes.
What I was going to say is also that it's a matter of taste, and like if you want to focus on financial stuff, there's whole industries around that. So if you want to do that, that's fine. What I'm saying is, for me, I love it when I can dissolve a problem that everybody is focused on. Because then again, it's like you can divest your attention into things that I personally find more meaningful. There is no financial need on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I was like, that's a bullshit need then. Cool. Let's see what happens if you live in accordance with the belief that that's a bullshit need. And for me, it's like, okay, great. I'm much happier this way.
And can you give us an example of, or maybe these are the fake problems?
Oh, these are all the fake problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
who do I need to be in order to be attractive to a mate?
Yeah.
Bullshit problem. Yeah, a lot of the problems that people tell, societal things that people tell you stories about, they're just stories. So, as Peck says, you got to challenge stories. Dedication to truth is one of his tools for discipline. And you got to challenge those stories. I mean, you don't have to if you want to live a meaningless life. That's a bit... Yes! That was a bit judgmental. But dedication to truth is important for me, so... I always want to challenge these things. I'm a scientist. It's like, you make a claim, I'm going to try and falsify it.
Yeah.
False.
I also like how he says, I think I wrote this down so I can quote it better. Give me 1 second, sorry. No, I don't think I have actually. So I'll just say it. He basically says that, yeah, like misunderstanding or a incorrect perception of the world is to a... Oh, no, it's not... Okay, I'll just accept that I'm not saying it quite as he said, but basically either incorrect perception, or like just failing to recognize the reality of something is like like it leads to mental
Yes.
illness is basically denying reality.
Yes.
And because most of us from time to time with this and that might deny reality, most of us here and there might have like small degrees of mental illness. What I liked about that was the idea that the importance of truth to remain mentally healthy and facing it when it's painful and never shying away from it. Yeah, because ultimately it's in your best interest to just try and brutally accept it, feel the pain, and continue.
Yeah, because like the pain leads to a problem. Problems lead to opportunities for growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, you got to shattering. Yeah, as I said, like shattering the biggest mistruths leads to the biggest liberation. So the further you can go into delving into truth, the better. And he gives a strategy for how to do this, which he calls bracketing, which is the act of balancing the need for stability with the need for greater understanding. And when I read that, I was like, oh, hypothetical sympathy. Yeah. You got to go into it until you know what it's like to believe it, and only then to adopt this critical attitude. So that was one of the places where I was like, oh, okay, cool. This ties back into stuff that I believe and have practiced and have read.
Can you give us an example of that?
Bracketing. Oh, okay, yeah. I bracketed when I was like, okay, I judge people that love video games. So then let me just bracket my own beliefs and then see what it would be like to be a person that loved video games. Go into that and then see what it's like on the other side. And so I challenged this value judgment that I had, that it's objectively bad to love video games. It's a waste of time. So I bracketed that for a moment. And he says that the reason you need to bracket things is because if you question too much, you're going to lose your sense of stability. So you need to do it in a piecewise way. So I bracketed that and then I challenged and I came back and now I think I understand more. I have a more holistic view.
You challenged it by trying to act like a person that loves video games would act.
Yeah. I tried to become one of those people.
You tried to love the games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried to find my own way in. I didn't try to do it in their way. I tried to do it in my way.
Yeah.
Such that I could be one of those people. And now I have a more holistic view.
And you found your way?
Yeah. I did, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I know what it's like to love video games, and now I can step back from that, and I don't have to choose to be one of those people. I also bracketed my beliefs around self-help. I would never have read a book like this back when I was a scientist, because I think a lot of people with science degrees think that they have the answer. This is in the Road Less Traveled. He talks about how science is a religion. It's a worldview. And he also talks about how science can be just as limited as religion. And in the back of the book, he actually talks about how like he would like to come to a more holistic perspective where we break through the limitations of both. So I had to bracket my pomposity around being a scientist of this is not the gospel. Let's see if there's things other than science that can be useful. And it was wonderful for me because now I have I would say that at least half of my interests are totally humanistic, artistic, creative. I'm very balanced between having a creative aspect and having a scientific aspect. So if I hadn't bracketed that belief, I would have been so much less fulfilled as a person now. I mean, yeah, and I balanced it by, I got a science degree and then I got an arts degree. That was my way of balancing, not saying that everybody has to do that. Then I realized, okay, in philosophy, when I got my philosophy degree, it was really a degree in the history of Western philosophy. Got to balance that. Let's bracket that. There's nothing superior about Western philosophy over Eastern. Let's see if we can go into Eastern and see if we can know what it's like to love Eastern philosophy. So I'm constantly bracketing and trying to rejig. And then I always find that I come back to a place where I have so much more of a broad and rich perspective. So I'm constantly trying to do that. Yeah.
Okay. Another point I had here was that I found it interesting. We talked about in a previous podcast how I think that effectively, like, just not caring about things is like the saddest outcome.
Okay, apathy. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's
You're not
the
a
word
fan of
I'm looking
apathy.
for. Yeah, and interestingly, in this, he says we fail because we're lazy. Evil is laziness to the extreme.
Yep.
So I thought, there you go. It's along the same lines as that. Taking it further.
Work is the willingness to extend yourself against laziness, and courage is the willingness to extend yourself against fear. Those are his definitions, which I liked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how he talks about laziness. I was like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah. And that the extreme of laziness is evil. It's an interesting way to think about it. It kind of makes sense. What's the laziest way to solve that problem? Is an evil solution.
Yeah, I think the way that I more think about it is like it's a functional definition around you. It's something that you really want to avoid in the extreme. Because if you're lazy, then you don't get to extend yourself. And for him, spiritual growth is the meaning of life. So if you're lazy, you don't get to fulfill the meaning of life. That's the way I read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, more like a functional definition. If you're lazy, then you're bringing yourself towards the opposite pole of a meaningful life. So, yeah.
Because wouldn't the opposite of that be a meaningless life? But couldn't you argue that very evil people, while evil, do meaningful things?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak on Peck's behalf. I wish we had him there.
That'd be cool.
I'm not going to say what he would say.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that's how I read it.
Yeah. My thought on it at the moment is that, that's probably the evilness can come from that supreme laziness. It could even be laziness to explore other viewpoints, say. That's how you can commit evil actions, to not truly consider the other side's views or needs or anything like that. Yeah. And now also, I know, interesting you haven't brought this up yet, you disagree with his definition of entropy.
Yeah, okay, cool. Let me lead into that by talking about his views on confrontation. Because he had some really interesting things that was also another part of the of the section on love that really got me into it. And then I was like, okay, now I need to confront Peck about his definition of entropy, which is just incorrect. So yeah, first of all, I wanted to bring up a quote that I think is interesting. So he says, spiritually evolved people will exercise their power in quiet ways. In exercising their power, they suffer greatly because the process of making decisions with total awareness is often infinitely more painful than making ones with limited awareness. Now, funnily enough, Bertrand Russell, who is the guy that talked about hypothetical sympathy, has a very analogous quote. He says, one of the painful things about our time is that those who feel certainty are stupid, and those with any imagination and understanding are filled with self-doubt and indecision. And so in the section on love, he says, Peck now says, that the truly loving person, for the truly loving person, confrontation does not come easily. Valuing uniqueness and difference, they will be reluctant to assume I am right and you are wrong. But he also acknowledges that sometimes you are right and they're wrong. It's true. Sometimes you do know best. And so, let me actually try and find where he talks about entropy and just read out what he says. And it was interesting because I was like, because I felt what he says, which is that like, I value unique opinions. I value uniqueness and difference. So I was like, why should I speak up? But it's like, in this case, I happen to know better than he does. So he says, and so in my book, this is on page 252. He says, The most striking feature of the process of physical evolution is that it's a miracle. Given what we understand of the universe, evolution should not occur. The phenomenon should not exist at all. But both of those sentences are false. One of the basic natural laws is the second law of thermodynamics, which states that energy naturally flows from a state of greater organization to a state of less organization. That's fine. In other words, the universe is a process of winding down. Ultimately, according to the second law of thermodynamics, in billions and billions of years, the universe will completely wind down and reaches its lowest point as an amorphous, totally disorganized, totally undifferentiated blob in which nothing happens anymore. That follows the second law of thermodynamics. This state of total disorganization and undifferentiation is termed entropy. That's just incorrect. And so, I asked you to read a couple of definitions on entropy. And it might sound like this is coming from a place where, I have a PhD in physics. I've taught statistics at the university level. I have a degree in mathematics. So it's like maybe, I have some special knowledge. But actually, I asked you to read something from the Wikipedia entry on entropy that is freely available to everybody. And so before I go into why I think why I know it's incorrect, I wanted to get your opinions on if you've read that definition of entropy that's freely available for everybody on Wikipedia, and whether or not you think that Peck's definition is incorrect.
Yeah, I think I could see both ways of this, and then I think Peck was saying. Let's first start with entropy. And am I right in saying that your definition of it is that things...
Not my definition.
The definition is that things flow into a more disorganized state.
No. Okay.
Sorry.
Let me read what I sent you.
Yes. I'm sorry, mate.
Let me read what I sent you. Okay, so this is straight from the Wikipedia entry on entropy, and we might say, we might want to defend Peck by saying he's not a physicist. It's okay, then don't talk about physics. We know more about entropy now. Actually, this definition of entropy comes from 1880s, so it's 100 years older than Peck's book. So for a given set of macroscopic variables, the entropy, this is from Wikipedia, the entropy measures the degree to which the probability of the system is spread out over different possible microstates. In contrast to the macrostate, which characterizes plainly observable average quantities, a microstate specifies all molecular details about the system, including the position and velocity of every molecule. The more such states are available to the system with appreciable probability, the greater the entropy. So, so I can compare that to the last sentence that Peck here has. This state of total disorganization and undifferentiation is termed entropy. That's as incorrect as saying that temperature is when everything is hot. No, a state of total disorganization is not termed entropy. We might say that such a state has high entropy, but that's as bad as saying that the definition of temperature is when something is very hot.
Yeah.
And so the reason that this is bad is because it eluded you, and you're a smart person with a quantitative background. You have a degree in actuarial science. And so even you couldn't see the difference between this definition that's given in this book and the precise definition which is on Wikipedia. And he also says that given what we understand of the universe, evolution should not occur at all. The phenomenon should not exist at all. And that's just a simple misunderstanding of the second law of thermodynamics, which I can read in the second thing that I sent to you, which is, it says, it follows, this is from Wikipedia, it follows from the second law of thermodynamics that the entropy of a system that is not isolated may decrease. So it's not always true that a system always increases in entropy. That's not true.
But
and
the net.
Yeah, the net, yeah.
Yeah.
An air conditioner, for example, may cool the air in a room, thus reducing its entropy. The heat expelled from the room and the system, which the air conditioner transports and discharges to the air, always makes a bigger contribution to the entropy of the environment than a decrease to the entropy of the air in the system. Thus, the total entropy of the room plus the entropy of the environment increases in agreement with the second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics says that entropy increases everywhere globally, which is true, but that doesn't mean that you can't get increased entropy locally.
Decreased entropy.
Decreased entropy locally, right?
Yeah.
And so this idea that evolution shouldn't happen and that we shouldn't have complex organisms like human beings with brains.
Could you consider the Earth a local state?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so small compared to the infinite size of the universe. And so while it is true that it appears that we as humans that have brains are complicated and we can do complicated things such as making movies, while it is true that in our heads may locally reduce entropy, actually the global entropy of the universe always increases. So unfortunately, he's just incorrect. Like this is not a matter of debate or interpretation, because he says entropy is a state of total disorder and evolution shouldn't occur. He makes clear claims that are just false.
Okay, so my interpretation of this is, maybe he's not being precise enough for your liking, but is he saying that the universe tends toward high entropy?
He didn't say that.
This is my interpretation of it, though.
You're allowed to interpret it incorrectly, but if I can, again, simply read what he wrote. I'm not adding anything to what he wrote, but he said that entropy is a state of total disorder. So you can, if you want, what I would liken what you're doing now is when people say, but the Bible doesn't necessarily say that evolution can't occur.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so you can interpret things in whichever way you'd like, but he does say on page 252, this state of total disorganization and undifferentiation is termed entropy. And I would be okay if he's like, the universe tends towards greater entropy. Yeah. It seems to violate the law, the second law of thermodynamics. But it just means that people walk away with an incomplete picture, and it's not I don't think it's something that can be justified because because 10 million people have read this book now. And it was confusing enough that even somebody as clever as you got an incorrect picture.
Yeah. I'm just reading the definitions of entropy as well on Google. Lack of order or perceptibility, gradual decline into disorder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you understand the point he was trying to make with that anyway? Because I think, does he not then go from there to saying, being human is kind of an unnatural, a lot of the things we do is unnatural, goes against nature or whatever, and trying to think the rest of his point. I mean, one thing that we both, I think, like that he says is undergoing psychotherapy is the most unnatural thing a person can do.
I think you can accept that from a purely first-person psychological perspective. You don't need to invoke an incorrect understanding of entropy to do that.
Yeah.
And the reason that I think it's bad is because, as I mentioned, if you miseducate, you said it, that a disconnection with reality leads to mental illness. So if I'm not saying that he did this purposefully, but I do think it's neglectful to miseducate people. And he's he went to Harvard and he's a doctor. And so somebody at some point, I'm sure that there were a bunch of editors that should have taken that out. And another point is that you don't even really remember where the entropy point led to, which means that it's not key.
Do you remember where it led to?
No.
Okay, yeah.
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 It wasn't key to the book, I don't think.
Yeah. I also, that was in the final.
Yeah, it's towards the end.
I found maybe the first half much more impactful and what I mean?
Definitely. Me too.
Applicable and relevant, maybe.
Me too.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say on that entry point?
Yeah, no, I think you're right that he eventually uses this argument to say that, yeah, psychotherapy is an unnatural act.
Yeah.
Yeah, just looking at the...
Although I'm trying to think, was that earlier that he says that, or is that around that point, do you think?
No, it's just after that point.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, and okay, so then his way of tying off will be, therefore, psychotherapy is one of the most human things you could do.
Yeah.
I'm guessing around those lines. Yeah. Yeah.
It's it just violates one of his own principles, which is dedication to truth.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. You can still be dedicated to truth. Realize you made a mistake. And
yeah.
Amend, you know.
Okay, I would be not dedicated to truth.
Yeah.
And confrontation where I know better than somebody, if I wasn't to bring it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I also thought, I mean, one quote that I really like from the book is, one measure of a person's greatness is their capacity for suffering.
Yeah.
So that was Boss.
Mm. Mm.
So I also find that almost a concept that helps endure suffering in a sense. Like if in times of extreme, like if I'm suffering and I think I want to be a great person, so just like take this and continue, you know. And then also maybe like also always seek truth. Don't live in a fantasy, and when it's painful, so be it. Suffer rather than delude. You know. Yeah.
Yeah, what comes to mind is like, as you know, I have a portrait of Socrates at his death, where he's like, he was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth. Basically, he asked too many questions that negated the common view, and so they basically said, "Look, you can either leave Athens, we're going to banish you, or you'll be sentenced to death, where you'll be forced to drink hemlock." And he's like, "Well, okay, I did nothing wrong, so I'm not going to leave." And so then he was forced to drink hemlock. And there's this portrait of him where he's defiantly drinking hemlock with one hand in the air, being like, "I didn't do anything wrong, so I'm cool to die," you know. And everybody around him is like in anguish. And I don't know why, but that's a stark, like, the reason I bought it is because I was trying to look for like a really stark image of stoicism. And I was like, that's really cool, where he can like defiantly go to his death and almost invite death. Yeah, because what he believes in is more important than that. And I was trying to think before about like, I'm always trying to think of counterexamples, and it's like, I can't really think of anybody that I admire that is great that hasn't suffered. And it goes to like just the first passage of the book where it's like, suffering is not bad. You know, life is full of problems. Problems are painful, but problems are good because they force you to grow. So. And I think in one of the podcasts we talk about how suffering is a choice. It's a story that you tell yourself about why this is bad.
Yeah.
So that's negotiable.
Yeah. Well, is it something like pain is real, suffering is a choice, or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. I don't think I actually have much else to... Is there anything else you wanted to talk about from the book?
Yeah, the back end is weird.
Okay.
Which I like.
Yeah.
So he says... And it's funny because when I read these things... Because obviously part of the primary motivation for reading this book is because I knew it was important to you. I thought it'd be good something to talk about. So I was constantly thinking about, well, how would Lockie have read this? Or like, how does he feel about this? And so there were these sentences like, for instance, since everybody has a worldview, everybody has a religion. I just imagine you being like, I don't have a religion. What the fuck are you talking about? And he says to develop a religion or a worldview that is realistic, and as you said, not having a realistic worldview, it leads to mental illness. Oh, and we should say that Peck was a psychotherapist. He was a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And so for him, mental illness is his forte.
Yeah.
But so to develop a religion or worldview, which he takes to be the same thing, that is realistic, we must constantly revise. And so this comes to this thing around bracketing, which is a really useful tool to revising your current beliefs. But he says, our primary source of culture is how our parents behaved. To become mature, we must rebel against and reject the religion of our parents. We must rebel against and reject the religion of our parents. For their worldview will be narrower than that of which we are capable. So you might say, hold on, I believe some of my parents' beliefs are good. There is no such thing as a good hand-me-down religion. To be the best of which we are capable, our religion must be wholly a personal one, forged entirely through the fire of our questioning. And then I wrote, boom. So what do you think about that, man?
Yeah, I like and agree with a lot of it. Yes, I don't know if you can rebel against all of your parents' values and.
Well, I think it's just the system. So there's no such thing as a good hand-me-down religion.
Yeah.
You can't adopt their whole worldview. Of course, you can take parts of it.
Yeah. My way of looking at it is like question everything. Yeah. So. Yeah, anything that maybe any values that your parents have. Yeah. Question it. I guess in this case, my mum had the value of this book, in a sense.
Right.
And I did naturally later read it and appreciate it. So, I like the point. I think it's important.
It's really radical. It's like, he says, wholly a personal one.
Yeah.
Your worldview must be wholly personal. So all of the beliefs, all of the little pieces that make up your worldview, each of them have to be individually challenged, and then you have to come to your own conclusions on them that are and somehow bracketed away from the prevailing culture around you. I mean, that is a very tough thing to do.
And also the fact that everyone's will be slightly different.
Oh yeah, wholly personal, he says.
Yeah. I feel like it might also be insightful for religious people or even dogmatic people, like
in general, yeah.
Yeah. That you have to analyze these ideas that you've been shown and come to your own conclusions.
Yeah.
And own values. Yeah.
Yeah, like for him, this is like non-negotiable. He says to become mature. He doesn't say this is like something that's nice. He says to become mature, you have to rebel against and reject the religion of your parents. Non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Really big.
Maybe
point.
Another way I take the rebel and reject is like even just as a thought exercise, not actually physically doing that for everything, but thinking, what if I didn't value that thing?
Yeah.
How would things be then? You know. Yeah. Maybe to summarize, don't blindly just follow anything that anyone's done, but question it and come to your own values. Yeah.
Take the road less traveled. Nay. Now, he says, for the most part, both the religious and the scientific remain in self-imposed narrow frames of reference. So, yeah, towards the end of the book, he's encouraging a synthesis between or something that exists above and beyond both, which I like. And so another thing that came to mind in terms of something that might be weird for you was towards the end of the book, he says, our journey of spiritual growth is guided by the invisible hand of God with infinitely greater wisdom than that of our conscious mind.
Cool. Yeah. So I think when he starts talking about God and that, maybe my feeling at the moment is that I do like, I think I mentioned to you before, I like the idea that there's like mystical beauty in the world, and that when certain things happen, rather than it just being, well, that's just random,
Yep.
that there's something more to it, you know? Even like a subconscious prompt on something, you know? So maybe something random could happen, but the way you interpret it, something in your subconscious that haven't been able to, I don't know, you know, have the strength to acknowledge or whatever, maybe it gives you that. So yeah, and maybe just like being romantic and everything like that. I like the idea of so if you're thinking God, not actually a not a thing, but maybe it's like love or something like that. This is very hard to put into words. Yeah. So maybe to me it might be a thing that different people call different things. His word for it is God, and yeah. So maybe my like optimistic nature and that somehow this ties in with that. Do you know what I mean? So not that everything is. It's hard though, because I do believe in like the some things are random, and just by the nature, the laws of the universe, these, like as in physics, things happen. Yeah. But like I like to attribute something more to certain things. I don't know. Like when beautiful things happen, you know what I mean? I like to think like it was meant to be, or things like that, as opposed to just like, oh, that's nice. That looks nice. You know what I mean? I don't know if that was a sufficient answer for you.
Well, what I'm wondering is, because Peck is, he's no longer with us, but he was Christian. And he actually talks a bit about, I can't find it now, but he talks about Hindu stuff. He talks about Buddha. He talks about Jesus. So my question for you is, given that dedication to truth is one of the 4 tools of discipline, why did you not bracket your secular beliefs and take a belief in God more seriously?
Nice. I feel like maybe I did that as a kid.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I maybe have explored the other religions very lightly, so I definitely could go deeper on that. Yeah.
You think you've had enough of that?
Yeah, maybe it's like also the focus and attention thing. Right now, it doesn't seem like the most important. I know I can't. Almost sounds ridiculous to say, but it doesn't seem like the most important thing for me to focus on at this moment.
So you don't believe that you're guided by the hand of God that has infinitely greater wisdom than you?
I feel like maybe I believe that, but do I believe that the hand of God is like my spirit, like deeply what I feel, you know, and listening to that.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, because I also think I share the nice thing about that, and I mean, is this truth? I don't know, maybe I should question that as well. But like the faith in the universe, in the sense that when really sad things happen, accepting it, but having like this hope and optimism that beautiful things will come. You know, the right thing will happen. You know, and yeah, I think part of that is coming from being your true, authentic self and expressing that. Because then the right thing kind of will come, because you know what I mean, the world can see you as a person. But at the same time, I think it's there's like maybe that's within you, that in your spirit.
I like the way that because one of the ways that he introduces the concept of grace, because like he introduces it lightly in the beginning, and then he goes, I'll talk about this later in the fourth section. And then I was like, I kind of want to know about it now. But I was patient. But one of the ways that he introduces it is he says that in his clinical practice, what he found is that, you know, some of these people have been through horrific things, and it was surprising to him how some of these people seem to cope. And he called that thing grace. Like, how come you don't want to commit suicide? Or like, why are you angry at the world? Like, all these terrible things happened to you. How did you survive? And that thing that kind of guided their spirit like a shepherd towards the light or whatever, that's grace.
Yeah.
So when he talked about it, and then he said, I'll talk about this later, I was excited for the end of the book, because I was like, okay, cool. He's going to talk about grace and like how we can bring that into our lives. And it was a really nice way to wrap up the book, because he basically says, the way to invite grace into your life is to become a wholly disciplined and loving person.
Yeah.
And that really that just reflects what I found in my life, which is what you said earlier, which is that if you kind of follow that quiet voice and you're devoted to it and you believe and you trust it, then whatever comes out of that is wonderful. And I felt that the times that I was like, that my life seemed to be the most touched with grace is when I was loving and disciplined. And then things just magically happened. And I'm happy to call that grace.
Yeah. Well said, man. I agree. Yes, to me that's where like the God, the supernatural, whatever you want to call it. Because maybe it's just people have their own things they associate with supernatural, and that everyone would have a different interpretation of what that means. But to me, it might mean just like being your true spirit. Because what even is your spirit? What even makes you you? Where does that come from? I don't know. But whatever that is, I'm trying to like embrace it and be true to it, you know. And maybe that you call that supernatural, or you call that God, or whatever.
For me, the religion that I'm most sympathetic towards is Hinduism, and a particular denomination called Advaita Vedanta. And one of the key beliefs in Hinduism is summarized as Atman is Brahman. So Brahman is ultimate reality. We might want to call that God. And your Atman is the thing that's in you. It's your spirit. It's your ego. And the key foundational teaching of Hinduism can be summarized as you are that. In Sanskrit, Tattvamasi. You are that. That is thou. You are that. And I really like that way of thinking about it. That you are ultimate reality. You are God. Not in any omniscient way. It doesn't mean that you have godlike ability, but that you are part of the universe. You're not separable from it. When you breathe in, you're breathing in the universe. When you breathe out, you breathe out the universe. You're made of stardust. You're not separable from the universe. You are ultimate reality. And you're not, there's no separation between all of us is an illusion. And so I like that thought that we are all the universe. I find that to make a lot of sense. And the Hindus ask you to kind of go in and to verify this by yourself. Just meditate, sit down, examine, and you'll come to that conclusion. And it was interesting because I had all these meditative experiences that I was trying to integrate, and I came across the Upanishads, which is one of the foundational texts of Vedanta, and the particular school that I'm most associated with or sympathetic towards. And it had all these accounts of people that come to enlightenment experiences. And I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, it's all these things are thousands of years old accounts of enlightenment experiences and how to gain enlightenment. And I was like, yeah, this is exactly what this is what I experienced. I had a first person experience of these things. And then to read them in this thousands of years old foundational text was really cool, because then there was a whole bunch of scripture behind that, which, it just made me feel like, oh, cool. Like, this is understandable in some other way that's non-scientific. And there's a whole community of people that is millennia old, that believe this certain way. And then that allowed me to kind of gain wisdom in a new way, which is to bracket my secular beliefs and take their beliefs more seriously. And the more seriously there's some metaphysics I don't believe in, about multi-headed and multi-limbed beings. But I'm very open to certain aspects of what they talk about. So, I'm very sympathetic to this idea that God, or the grace, or whatever, is within us. We're in constant communion with it. And it is us. It's here and now, and not out there and not transcendent.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And what you just said also reflects upon your own, not hand-me-down religion, but like hand-picked, questioned, and
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like it would even be difficult for you to completely convey your, in quotes, religion to a child, say.
Maybe. Yeah. Although maybe they have it. This is one of the things that actually Peck talks about. One of the benefits that children have is that maybe they are in greater contact with grace than adults are. Yeah. But the bad thing about being a child is that you can't really survive on your own. So to balance these two,
communicate their wisdom either.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing that he says, which is really interesting, is that you have to gain yourself before you can give it away. He talks about letting go. And I really like that. Self-transcendence can only come after self-actualization. You need to become a self before you can let go of that self. Anyway.
Yeah. I also really like his point about how amazing kids are and how you can learn from kids. And if you don't think you can learn from your child, then like you're hugely mistaken.
Uh-huh.
I like that.
Uh-huh.
And recently I applied that when I was coaching some kids. Just, I feel like a big thing they can teach me again is like being spontaneous and being innocent, and just like finding dumb things funny. And I don't know, I love that. I want to be more like that. So, yeah. I'm sure there's a lot more they can teach us too, but because they are somewhat more insightful in ways because they don't have as much on their mind and that, often, yeah.
Yeah, again, for me, it's just a synthesis. I want to have all of those qualities, and I also want to have the ability to take care of myself and be like a responsible adult.
Yeah.
I want to, as you know, like when I got back from India, I realized that there are certain qualities that we associate with being feminine, being sympathetic, and being nurturing, and being emotional, that are opposite to the masculine qualities of strength and leadership and confidence. But one of the realizations I had is like, why do we box those things? No, I'm going to be strong, confident, wise, and a good leader, and also open, sympathetic, kind, warm, nurturing.
And emotional.
Yeah, there's no reason. Yeah, emotional and rational. There's no reason to bracket these things off and say, if you're a man, you have to do this, and if you're a woman, you have to do this. No, that you can have both of those things. And it's better to live at the synthesis of all of those things. So I think it's an arbitrary line to say that's childish And when you turn 18, no more of that. No. Because you often find that like when people come back around to being 80, they go back into doing childish shit. So it's like, okay, let's just live with the wisdom of an 80-year-old in the body of a 34-year-old. You know? Possible, definitely possible. And again, it comes back to what we were saying before about how you can cut through the stories, which people say are true stories that you have to live in accordance with. Cut through that. You can cut through it. I don't feel like adulting. Adulting is hard. It's hashtag adulting. No.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it, that you feel like a kid. There's no need to demonize that. You are a kid. And hopefully that childlike nature stays alive. You don't want that to die. It's a really important part of yourself. And it has wisdom, like you said. Okay, great. Let's have that, but combine it with the wisdom of what it's like to be a responsible adult.
Yeah. A good example of that was like, yeah, I've got a great example. Okay, so I'm at training gymnastics, right? I'm doing pommel horse, doing it with the other senior guys, and one of the guys, he's not having a good time. Like I'm having a pretty good session where like I'm improving my skills, and then one of the other guys is not making a skill that he normally would make, say, or not making the routine he'd usually make, falling in different parts, and I can see him getting, because this is a hard thing as well, even like I can see him getting frustrated himself, which I respect, because you need to expect of yourself to do better, but you've also got to take care of yourself and not be too hard on yourself, so it's a balance. Anyway, but I can see he's like getting annoyed and he's focused on what am I doing wrong? How can I fix this? Anyway, so I'm noticing all that as an adult, yes, as a hopefully thoughtful and emotionally intelligent adult. You can see and imagine what this person is feeling, and therefore I'm not going to talk to him about the stuff I was going to chat with him about at the moment. I'll let him focus and get through it, and if I have some ideas of how to help him, I'll mention that, but otherwise I'll leave him to it. Anyway, at the same time all this is going on, there's this mat like near the pommel horse, which is like, I don't know why, because most mats are soft, but this one, it's like a special like physio foam thing, and it's super bouncy, like it bounces back up. And there's like 5-6-year-old boys that are training on the parallel bars next to the pommel. Between their sets, they run over and they're jumping on it, up and down. And then they keep going bouncy, 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 and they're just calling that out.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there loving it, because I'm like, I freaking love that you guys are so entertained by just jumping up and down this mat, and you're yelling out bouncy, bouncy, bouncy. Like, I wanted to do it with it in a way. But then I'm looking at this guy who's so pissed, and I was thinking like, that's gonna make him more annoyed.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. And then I had the thought of like, this is hilarious. I love their innocence and their spontaneity, but they lack the awareness and maybe the wisdom that now is not an appropriate time, given what's going on with this guy, to maybe do that.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So the person I want to be is the guy that can jump up and down that and say bouncy. I actually wanted to do it just to force myself to be uncomfortable. I didn't do it. But also, yeah, be aware of the needs of others, right?
Yep.
And to be able to do both those things. Yeah.
Yep.
And I was thinking about telling those kids, but I don't think it would have been the appropriate time to be like, guys, because I wouldn't want to stifle. That might make them less spontaneous, I guess. It's very tricky. To be a good parent, man, you do that at the right time. Maybe I would have at the dinner table with those kids, then just casually mentioned that. Yeah.
Nice, man.
Cool. Anything else from the novel?
Yes. No, not really. I mean, I'm sure that there are things. I mean, we can probably bring them up in other podcasts, but
yeah.
As I said, for me the book was very digestible. And was useful in giving me new framings for things.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, where he really distills concepts nicely. A lot of things that I've thought of, and he just words it so well.
Yeah. Except entropy.
Don't worry, I'm sure the publisher will strike that from the book.
Yeah, they'll listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, man, to close out this one, I'll just leave us with a quote from Peck himself. I wasn't planning to close with this. I was planning to close with the capacity for suffering, person's greatness thing. But during this talk, and upon like maybe the last week of reflection, what I'm going to say, I think, is really, really important. Yeah. And you actually mentioned it during the talk, which was the principal form that the work of love, I like to use the phrasing work. The principal form that the work of love takes
is attention.
Is attention.